The first race of the Formula One 2022 season goes to Charles Leclerc from Ferrari and his teammate Carlos Sainz right behind him in second place for a Ferrari 1-2. What an absolutely awesome way for the Ferrari team to start the year. Lewis Hamilton finds a way to put that Mercedes, which is clearly the third best car on the grid right now. They have a lot of work to do, but Lewis ends up putting that car on position for a third place finish, the final podium slot, and his teammate George Russell right behind him in fourth place. And can we please talk about how much of a machine Kevin Magnussen is? I made a video about it 2 days ago talking about his qualifying, and I'm standing by that. In fact, it's been proven even better. Kevin Magnussen, what an awesome drive from him, considering he was out of Formula One for a year. He comes back to Haas with basically less than 2 weeks of preparation in a new car under new conditions, and he manages to put that Haas into fifth place. Now, of course, with Max and Sergio Perez retiring, Kevin would have been further down the order, but that's not the point. The point is he still would have finished in the points, and he still would have finished ahead of more than half of the field. That tells you the Haas has finally figured out their issues, and of course, with them having the Ferrari engines, I think their pace also displays that as well. Mick Schumacher finished 11th. We'll get down to that. A great performance for him, I think, considering, again, how bad the Haas has been for the previous a couple of seasons in Formula One. I'm so happy to see them, not just as an American. I mean, I never really had that attachment to Haas anyways, but I've always liked the team. I've always liked most of the drivers that they've had, with the exception of one, which I'm not going to talk about that. But even still, I'm very happy to see that they are no longer back markers like they've been essentially for the previous two seasons. They are now a team that can clearly compete for points finishes in this 2022 season. So that's absolutely amazing. Hats off to Kevin Magnussen. He deserves a lot more credit than I think he is given from people in Formula One. He's a great driver. Yes, he's been involved in some incidents as far as on-track situations in the past, but I never took away that Kevin K-Mag was a great guy, and clearly he has the talent and the pace to still be a very competitive driver. Newly, father as well. So hats off to K-Mag. Valtteri Bottas puts that Alfa Romeo into sixth. Valtteri never lost his edge. I wasn't one of those people that thought, oh, he's being, downgraded to Alfa Romeo. He's not being promoted anymore. He's essentially going to depromotion. And people were like, oh, well, Valtteri Bottas, it's kind of going to be it for him. Sure, he won't have to hear the Valtteri it's James thing. But there were a lot of fans who thought Valtteri wasn't going to be competitive in that Alfa. And I understand from the performance aspect of the Alfa Romeo, but anybody that thought Valtteri Bottas was just going to essentially fall asleep at the wheel and not still be competitive, I'm like, why would you think that just because he's moving to a team that's obviously worse on the grid? But clearly, Valtteri, if anything, this is going to be better for Valtteri because now he doesn't have the pressure of having to play the team game with Lewis. He's clearly the better driver, the number one driver on Alfa Romeo, with his teammate having to obviously learn as a rookie, and still a solid result for Zhou, getting his first points finish as the first Chinese driver in Formula One. Again, I'll get down to him. But Valtteri Bottas puts that Alfa Romeo into sixth place. That is great. I'm so happy to see teams that were back markers and hardly able to score points or did not even score points. I'm so glad to see them finally scoring points. I think every legitimate Formula One fan should be happy to see these teams that have struggled finally be in a position where they can actually finish in the points and get that for their team. We move on next to Esteban Ocon, finishing in seventh place for the Alpine. Fernando Alonso finished ninth with Yuki Tsunoda in between them in that AlphaTauri, the only standing AlphaTauri in this race, finishing in eighth. The Alpines are pretty much where I thought. I think they've always had a pretty solid package, and I think under the right conditions, the Alpine can obviously put themselves in the right place to finish higher. But 7th and 9th, I think, for their first race, double points finish for them. That's pretty much what you expect. I think the Alpines haven't really dropped off from last year. I think they're just about where they were last year, and they'll probably continue to try their best to develop that car and get more pace out of it. So 7th, again, for Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda in 8th, Fernando Alonso in 9th, and again, Zhou Guan Yu, finishing in 10th, getting his first points finish in Formula One. Again, in the Alfa Romeo, that's a double points finish for the Alphas. That's a great way for them to start their season because they've really been on the back foot, I would say, the previous two seasons. Mick Schumacher, again, another great performance from him in that Haas, just missing the points, finishing out of 11th. I think they made a mistake not pitting him, clearly for fresh new softs. The rest of The drivers ahead of them they just had newer, fresher tires, and Mick just wasn't able to keep up with that. But even still, he managed to still keep that Haas in 11th place. He will get points finishes this year for sure. There is absolutely no doubt, because that Haas clearly is a much different vehicle than it's been really in the previous 2 to 3 seasons. In fact, I think this may be the best Haas will be probably in the last 3 seasons of Formula One. Lance Stroll finishes in 12th. The Aston Martins, they really are going through it. They didn't look good last year, with the exception of a couple great performances from Sebastian Vettel, who unfortunately missed obviously this race because of COVID. Nico Hulkenberg finished 17th for Aston Martin down the list. I'll get to him. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with the Astons. They've been, the newly changed team, and the redirection, whatever is happening, I don't think it's clearly working, because that car, as beautiful as it looks on track, it is just not competitive, and it really hasn't. And it seems like they have to hope for the best case scenario to even be in a position to finish in the points and to be competitive. So no idea what's going on with the Aston Martin. Alex Albon, welcome back to Formula One for Williams. He finishes in 13th. The Williams pretty much about where they were last year, I think. I don't know if we'll expect anything really significant from them in this 2022 season, but still, solid drive from Albon. He finishes in 13th. And I would say the biggest disappointment to me on the grid is the McLarens of Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris. Again, no idea what's happening with them. Daniel Ricciardo finishes 14th, Lando Norris 15th. That McLaren looks pretty bad, and I thought it actually looked solid in the first 2 testing sessions, and then we get to the race weekend, and then it's like, well, WTF, what happened to the McLarens? What's going on with the McLarens? They clearly have a lot of work to do, also running Mercedes engines. So I don't know if it's a Mercedes problem. I don't know if it's just individual teams and maybe a little bit of the engine, but whatever the case is, both McLarens not DNFing, but just finishing 14th and 15th and having virtually no real pace today. Extremely odd to see the McLarens, who have always been in the points, especially with Lando Norris, finishing 14th and 15th. It's odd to see. It's strange to see. And I hope they get their issues solved, just as I hope every team on the grid does. I'm not rooting against anybody. I think that's ridiculous to be intentionally rooting against a team, even if you have your favorites and you want your team to win, intentionally rooting for a team to have these mechanical issues and failures, which can become dangerous at a point. I think you have to be a little bit better than that. So McLarens, I hope they can figure out whatever their problems are and get that resolved. Next, move on to Nicholas Latifi, finishing in 16th. Again, the Williams is pretty much where I thought it would be, so nothing really crazy about that. Nico Hulkenberg, again, 17th for the Aston Martin. They just have not looked good since that new change, and I hope they get it together. I know they're working on that new factory, and one can hope that it will provide better results and consistency for them, but I think it's still a little bit of time away for Aston Martin to be where they want. I'm curious what's going to happen with the Strolls, how long they're going to commit to that team. It's just that they don't look good, and it's disappointing, I think, for most Formula One fans to see the Aston Martin really not being competitive unless it's under very certain circumstances that obviously seem to benefit them in their car for a particular race weekend. But again, not looking good for the Astons, not looking good for the McLarens. I think those are 2 pretty big disappointments here for today. And then again, the 3 DNFs, Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen, and Pierre Gasly, all essentially running under the same Red Bull umbrella. No idea. They all essentially had the same issue happen within the last 12 laps of the race. Maybe I'm miscounting. It could be closer to 15, but I swear, for sure, Perez and Max, they had their issues literally under the last 10 laps. Pierre Gasly's accident, or not accident, but his issue with his AlphaTauri catching fire is what caused the yellow flag, the safety car. Then eventually Perez and Max suffered their own issues and had DNFs as well. So there's clearly something that is not right there with those Red Bull engines, and hopefully they can get that fixed. I'm sure they will, but it's strange to see both Red Bulls retire, and then also Pierre Gasly have a DNF as well. It's unusual to see, I think, drivers and teams running the same engine to essentially have a DNF from both perspectives in the same race. Usually it's just like maybe one driver and then, other teams that aren't connected. But since they all essentially run under the Red Bull umbrella, I think that's extremely strange to see 3 of those drivers having issues that force DNFs and no points. That's a terrible start for Red Bull. They're going to have a huge fight, obviously, for the constructors because, as I've said in my previous videos, Ferrari is dangerous. And I think anybody underestimating Ferrari is a fool. They have clearly been the best car, I think, in the testing sessions. They have shown consistency, pace. They haven't shown any serious reliability issues. I think Ferrari have finally nailed it. They finally got it right. And it's not going to be an easy fight for the constructors. I think it's going to be a great fight, but in terms of Mercedes and Red Bull, I think they have a lot of catching up to do, especially on behalf of Mercedes. But it's not going to be something that they can easily swindle away. I think the Ferraris are going to be difficult to catch. If anybody could do it, it's going to be the Mercedes and the Red Bulls, but they have their work cut out for them, and they cannot take anything lightly, anything for granted, because I believe the Ferraris are going for the constructors this year without a shadow of a doubt, and I think Charles is obviously going for that Drivers' Championship, his first. That would be absolutely amazing for him. So that wraps up the results for the first race of this 2022 Formula One season. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Who are you guys disappointed with as far as the teams, drivers, whatever? I obviously expressed my thoughts. I'm sure you guys will have some different ones. You may disagree. That's perfectly fine. Let's just remember to keep it respectful in the comments if you choose to comment. If you're new, make sure to subscribe here for weekly Formula One content, and we'll be covering every single race weekend throughout this 2022 season. Appreciate love and support. Cannot say that enough, as I'm trying to get my words out, because I'm still excited off of that race. We got to see close racing, which is what the cars were designed for. Lots of overtakes. Yuki, I think, had 5, and that was maybe halfway through the race. So clearly we're going to get a lot of this action throughout the rest of the season. And I think every team on the grid, hopefully, will be improving their cars even more. So I can't imagine how unpredictable and how chaotic things are going to be as far as the order as we go through the season. Cannot absolutely wait. Hopefully you guys feel the same. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you today, but I will see you all later. Goodbye.